Let's take it over to the AFC North now. The Baltimore Ravens are actually starting off the NFL season September 5th versus the Chiefs, first game. Their win total is set at 10.5, plus 140 to win the AFC North, plus 1,000 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Ravens had a dream regular season last year, led by Lamar Jackson winning the MVP and got the top seed in the AFC playoffs. They lost a home AFC title game to the Chiefs. Can Baltimore repeat as the regular season AFC champs? And can they repeat the season that they had last year?
Yeah, I have some doubts about that. It just seemed like everything went right for the Ravens. You get the Lamar MVP
Yeah.
season, you get the one seed, which is so huge now in the NFL playoffs because not only do you get home field advantage, but you are the only team that gets a bye. So the Chiefs, I mean, that was an inexcusable loss last year. They went way too quickly away from their running game. The Chiefs were in a horrible spot, having to play in Buffalo in a grueling game on a Sunday evening, and having to travel back home, then back to Baltimore. Baltimore was at home for basically a month, had an extra day of rest because they played the Texans the day before. So it's hard to recover from that. In the NFL, there's a lot of parity, so you have to take advantage of the opportunities that you can get. And this is a team that lost several key members of their offensive line. And I think the biggest loss is defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, who did an outstanding job with that unit last year. And I just don't expect the same kind of volume or the same performance level that the Ravens defense now with McDonald gone as the head coach of the Seahawks. They do add Derrick Henry, but I'm not sure what he kind of adds to the Ravens in this stage of his career on the wrong side of 30 and just a player who's been used a lot by the Tennessee Titans over the last few years. So he's going to wear down. And I think there's a reason why. With all the things I mentioned, why the win total has been bet down from 11.5 when this opened in the spring, all the way down to 10.5 in the summer. So I wouldn't bet anything now just because the win total has moved a full game, and I don't want to be giving out the under. But I directionally agree that the under at 11.5 was the right bet, and I have no interest in going over 10.5 at this point because I could see kind of a big regression season from Baltimore, even though Lamar could have a strong season himself. But I just don't think the all around team is there for the Ravens this year, especially because they have a hard schedule playing in a tough AFC North. So interested to see what you said. If you said a Thursday night game at Kansas City, a little revenge there. I think we'll learn a lot about this team next Thursday. And if they start off with a loss, I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens are kind of fighting for the playoffs when we get into December.
Wow. Okay. Let's move it over to Cincinnati. The Bengals are set at 10.5 wins this season, plus 150 to win the AFC North, plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl, all again courtesy of Bally Bet. The Bengals' 2023 season was marred by injuries, especially to QB Joe Burrow. Are you a believer in Cincinnati and they'll be able to get into the playoffs with a healthy Joe Burrow?
Yeah, I'm a believer for the playoffs, but it's mostly because the schedule for the Bengals. So the extra games for Cincinnati this year, which are games that they get to play opponents that their division rivals don't have to play, are the against the Patriots, the Titans, and the Panthers, and that's as easy as you get in terms of your extra game, your 15th, your 16th, and your 17th game that the other teams in the division don't play. So really favorable in that sense for Cincinnati. I'm just kind of want to see what Joe Burrow looks like, and I think last year you can kind of just throw out the window for Burrow, who did play a little bit, but he suffered the calf injury in training camp, didn't play in the preseason, got off to a slow start, was dealing with that. Then he finally got healthy. It looks like the Bengals are about to make a run, and then he injures his hand. So the calf in the hand doomed Cincinnati last year from Joe Burrow. So kind of a write off last year. They did do a decent job kind of competing with Jake Browning as their quarterback and staying in the playoff race, but he wasn't a guy who was ever going to like win him a playoff game or anything. So, I mean, the Bengals are all in this year. This might be the last chance we see a team that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, just because of the contract situation. And when you're paying Joe Burrow and presumably Jamar Chase a lot of money, then you don't have a lot of money to load up the roster. So, in terms of like, they kind of missed the chance of winning a Super Bowl on Burrow's rookie deal. And now they have to hope that Burrow becomes that quarterback that no matter how much he gets paid, he could take a team to at least the playoffs. So, what's going to prevent me from betting anything in terms of the Bengals? Just question marks about their defense because they have lost some talent over the years because they do have
Yeah.
to pay Joe Burrow. So I think this is a team that maybe in individual games you can bet against. I know they've kind of been slow starters the last few years, even when Burrow was healthy. So maybe a team
Yeah,
to fade against the spread, but just because of that schedule, and if Burrow's healthy, I think that 10, 11 wins is a very probably a likely amount, and I can't really decide if I think it's going to be 11 or more or 10 or less.
for sure. Let's keep it in the state of Ohio and go over to the Cleveland Browns. Their win total is set at 8.5, plus 550 to win the AFC North, plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Browns had a very good regular season last year, given the injuries and the QB carousel that they had. Ended up being Joe Flacco leading them to the playoffs. What do you make of Cleveland this season?
Yeah, Joe Flacco, comeback player of the year, Kevin
Oh
Stefanski,
yeah,
coach of the year. It was quite a Miles Garrett defensive player of the year. It was a great award show if you're a Cleveland Browns
yeah,
fan. I do like this team though. I've liked them the last few years. I've always kind of been a team looking to buy on the Browns. I just like the coaching staff a lot.
sure.
Kevin Stefanski is a very a good offensive mind, a great offensive mind in my opinion. I respect him a lot. Always putting his players in the right places. I like how they build their roster, at least outside of quarterback, where it's very analytically driven how they draft players. And they've had a lot of hits in terms of developing players through the draft. So the combo Stefanski and a healthy offensive line this year makes me like the offense. Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Jerry Judy, Nick Chubb when he gets back. That's a pretty good group of weapons. The big question mark for me, though, Deshaun Watson. And if he can just kind of get to any point of the what he was with the Houston Texans before the Texans traded him to the Browns, because he just needs to be above average, because with that defense, with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, I do think this team is really strong. But if Watson does miss some time or starts playing poorly, at least the Browns have a more secure backup this season going into the year with Jameis Winston. So it's kind of a fascinating team where even if Watson is hurt or just struggles, like the drop off between Watson and Kevin Stefanski run offense with Jameis Winston under center might not actually be too much of a drop off. So I'm intrigued by this team. I'm still debating if I want to bet over their win total at 8.5. I will say I did bet them in week one against the Dallas Cowboys at home, laying less than a field goal. I think that's still a good bet if you want to take the Browns laying two or on the money line. The problem and what I'm being held back by in terms of betting on them over 8.5 wins is that schedule is pretty difficult. A lot of
Yeah,
challenges, a lot of landmines there. And if like Watson just doesn't have it this year, then maybe they stick with him because they feel like they owe him because he's under some, they paid so much money, gave up so much draft capital with him. So that's really the only thing holding me back
really
from
did.
playing the Browns before the season from a regular season win total perspective.
Yeah. A team we've heard a lot about in the news lately, the Pittsburgh
Mhm.
Steelers. Um, the win total is set at 8.5. They're plus 750 to win the AFC North, plus 5,000 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Steelers have never had a losing season in the 17 years under Mike Tomlin. But like I said, they've been in the news a lot. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, who will get it, who won't. Is this the season Pittsburgh goes under 500?
I actually think it is, and this is kind of a
Okay.
idea that I've been toying with all off season, and now that we've seen what the Steelers quarterback situation is like based on the preseason play of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, that idea has kind of strengthened for me. They're Russell Wilson and Justin Fields were good flyers for what the Steelers got for him. Like, Russell Wilson at 37 million after you trade all the picks for the Broncos was a horrible quarterback. But Russell Wilson after he's cut and you can get him for, just over $1 million, it was worth a shot. It's at least worth a shot. Maybe it still could work out, but it's worth a shot for what they did. And then going and just trading a 6 rounder for Justin Fields on the last year of his rookie deal, his fourth season, and he won't pick up the fifth-year option. So his last deal, it's worth trying. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you could figure it out in 2025, and you're not tied up to a big, highly paid quarterback who's average. So I think in terms of that, it was a smart moves for the Steelers. But I've seen him struggle in the preseason games, and I just don't think this offense is going to be really good with a new offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith. The big thing here and why I was kind of down on the Steelers even before all this quarterback stuff, if you look at their schedule, So they're gonna have to rack up wins early in the season because if you look at their last 8 games of the season, they play all 6 of their division games. So that's against the Ravens, Bengals, and Browns, who are all teams that could definitely make the playoffs or favored to make the playoffs. And then the non-division games in that 8-game stretch are at the Eagles, and then on Christmas Day against the Chiefs, which is 4 days after they play the Ravens in their 3rd game in 10 days. So the NFL did the Steelers absolutely no favors in terms of the schedule. If they don't start the season 7-2, or they start 6-3 or worse, I'll feel pretty good about under 8.5. It's a bet I placed last week
Sure.
after seeing the preseason struggles of both quarterbacks. And just in general, I know the Steelers don't lose, 8 or less games. I know that they've had some 8-8 seasons, but that was back in 16-game
Yeah.
schedules. But they've also have so much turnover luck and just weird black magic, and I just do not trust that to be a sustainable way to win games. I think eventually they're
Yeah.
going to bottom out, and all the luck that they've had isn't sustainable, and that's why I bet under 8.5 on the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. So I think this is the year. I think this is the year a Mike Tomlin
Wow.
coach team
Okay.
will go under 500, maybe 8-1, so they stay 500, but they go into the win total. I could see the Steelers having it tied just based on their kind of grinded out defense, run game.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if they have a tie and we go under the win total hits, but he keeps his 500 or better
Keeps it going. Yeah.
mark or streak going. So yeah, under Steelers 8.5 is a best bet for me.
For sure. All right, Nate. Got to put you on the spot again. Who do you think is going to come out on top in the AFC North?
So if I just had to pick a winner, I'd say the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a lot to do with the schedule, getting to play the extra games against the
Okay.
Patriots, the Titans, and the Panthers is just a huge edge for the rest of the division. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Browns won this division. I'm high on the coach. I'm high on like the whole roster outside of quarterback. And if we just get
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson to reach a little bit of his potential, I think that they have a shot at winning this division. I'm based on like Jameis Winston as a secure backup. I do think the Browns will make the playoffs in this division. I do also think the Ravens
Yeah.
will, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they are fighting for a playoff spot in the last week of the season, just because I think that Mike
Certainly.
McDonald lost the defensive coordinator is going to be huge. And then in terms of playoff teams, Steelers a complete write off for a playoff spot or a wild card spot in this AFC North. So Bengals to win the division, but don't be surprised if the Browns have make a run this season to win the AFC North.